My beloved child, this truth may shake you deeply. What I am about to say to you is not meant to confuse you, but to help you see more clearly what is opening before your eyes. There are movements in your life that are not signs of loss, but signals that you are stepping out of a familiar state and into a deeper level of life. When what once felt very stable begins to shift, it is not because the foundation has weakened, but because that foundation is being expanded. I do not awaken you to make you afraid, but to help you realize that you are no longer called to live within the old normal. My beloved child, not every shaking carries a negative meaning. Some shakings are an invitation to rise, when the place where you are, the space where you rest, the shelter you lean on, the safe zone you have grown accustomed to begins to change. It reflects a transition taking place within you. In the spiritual realm, where you stand and where you dwell always move together. A home is not merely an outward form, but an expression of the position I have entrusted to you, the authority I have placed in your hands, and the presence you carry each day. When that sign is touched, it is a confirmation that you are entering a season in which your authority needs to be recognized more clearly. Therefore, I want you to understand this with a peaceful heart in my order. No significant movement is without meaning. When your dwelling is brought into a state that requires attention, it is not to take away, but to strengthen. I am inviting you to look again at the boundaries I have entrusted to you, not because they are fragile, but because they are valuable enough to be protected and established more clearly. A home is the place where you live in alignment with your true identity, where you walk in freedom without needing to justify yourself, where you make decisions in peace. And precisely because I value where you stand, I am bringing clarity to the authority you carry, not through fear, but through steadiness. My child, do not be mistaken. When I speak of an invisible battlefield, I am not painting a dramatic picture to stir fear. I am describing a spiritual reality that many have overlooked because they are too preoccupied with the surface of life. There are battles that are not fought with noise, but with subtle shifts, not with violence, but with paperwork, not through direct confrontation, but through decisions made behind closed doors. And very often, the starting point of these battles is the place of dwelling, because whoever controls living space gains the ability to influence stability, freedom, and even courage. A person without solid footing will struggle to stand firm in major decisions. A person pushed into continual insecurity will more easily accept compromises they would never have accepted before. I want you to look honestly and ask yourself, why now, and not another time? Has instability touched your place of dwelling? Why is it that as you are entering a season of greater maturity, deeper understanding, and clearer awareness of your own worth, your home has become an issue? This is not coincidence. In the spiritual order, every person is given a territory, not only physical land, but a sphere of influence, responsibility, and freedom that I allow. When you step into a season where that territory is expanding, those who do not want you to stand firm will attempt to shrink it. And the fastest way to do that is to strike at the foundation, to touch the place you call home. My beloved child, there are people who understand this principle very well, even if they do not name it as I do. They know that if they disrupt your stability, you will lose focus. If they cause you to fear for your dwelling, you will hesitate in your steps. If they make you uncertain about where you belong, you will begin to doubt yourself. Therefore, do not take lightly the disturbances occurring around your place of living. Do not dismiss them as just paperwork, just someone else's decision, or just the general situation. In the spiritual realm, there is no such thing as just when it comes to the position I have entrusted to you. I remind you of a truth the scriptures state very clearly, and I want you to let this sink deeply into your heart. Unless the Lord builds the house, The builders labor in vain. Psalm 1:2-7-1. This verse does not speak only of construction by human hands. It speaks of the authority behind every foundation. When I am the one who establishes something, no one can remove it without facing consequence. And when I have not permitted it, no intervention, no matter how subtle or sophisticated, can be legitimized before me. Your house, in its deepest sense, exists not because people acknowledge it, but because I allow it. Therefore, my child, do not panic when you sense this collision. Panic is exactly what those who wish to take your position are hoping for. I do not call you into fear. I call you into alertness. The fact that your dwelling has become a point of contention is not a sign that you are about to lose everything. It is a sign that you are standing in a position important enough to be targeted. Those with nothing to protect are not attacked. Those without authority are not contested. And the very fact that you are facing this now tells you that you are standing on ground of value. I am leading you to slow down, so that you may understand that what I am doing is not withdrawing my protection, but opening your eyes so you can perceive the depth of the reality in which you are living. Your home is a symbol of your standing within my order, and when that symbol is shaken, I want you to lift your head not in fear, but in understanding that you are being invited into a new level of maturity, a place where you do not merely live, but know why you are permitted to live there. And this is only the beginning, my beloved child. I want you to pause here for a moment, because what I am about to reveal will completely change how you see the situation you are facing. You once thought that what has been happening around your place of dwelling was a sign of loss, of risk, of something slipping out of your hands. But I say to you, this is not loss. This is a dispute, and the difference between the two is profound. Loss causes you to lower your head, to accept, to surrender. A dispute requires you to stand upright, to recognize your position, and to understand what is truly being targeted. If you continue to call this misfortune, you will place yourself in a weakened position. But if you understand that this is a dispute over authority, you will begin to see clearly the role you play in this story. I want you to understand this clearly in the spiritual realm. No dispute arises unless two realities exist at the same time, one that seeks to take and one that is already holding. Those who possess nothing are not contested. Those who stand nowhere are not pushed aside. The fact that a force is attempting to interfere with your place of dwelling proves that you are standing on ground of value, in a position of weight, within a space that someone believes if they could claim it, they would gain control over much more than just that place. Therefore, I do not allow you to continue seeing yourself as a victim of circumstances. You are not someone who is about to lose. You are someone who is being targeted. My child, there is something subtle I want you to recognize. Those who seek to seize authority rarely appear as thieves. They often come disguised as the reasonable ones. They speak the language of necessity, of order, of planning, of what is supposedly best. And if you are not watchful, you will mistake what is happening for a natural process, when in truth you are being drawn into a dispute you never agreed to enter. That is why I call this an invisible battlefield. There are no gunshots, no shouting. Yet every small step is carefully calculated to move you away from the position into which I placed you. I know you are tired. I know there are days when you simply want peace, when you want everything to stop becoming more complicated. And it is precisely in those moments that a dispute becomes most dangerous. For the one seeking control does not need your opposition. They only need you to be tired enough to stop asking questions. They do not need your signature. They only need your silence while someone else signs on your behalf. They do not need your agreement. They only need you to think. It's probably not that serious. But my child, silence in a dispute is never neutral. It always leans toward the one who acts first. I want you to look directly at this truth. Even if it makes you uncomfortable, not everyone respects your boundaries, and not everyone acknowledges the authority I have entrusted to you. There are those who believe they understand your life better than you do. There are those who think they have the right to decide what is good for you, even though they have never lived a single day in your shoes. And when such thoughts combine with opportunity, with circumstance, with small gaps in systems or structures, they turn into action. That is when a dispute begins, not loudly, but undeniably. My beloved child, I am not saying this to plant suspicion in your heart toward everyone. I say this so that you may discern. Discernment is not distrusting all, it is refusing to hand over authority carelessly. You must understand that authority is not automatically transferred just because you are tired, just because you are busy, just because you want to avoid conflict. Authority is only transferred when you allow it, whether through words or through quiet surrender. And for this reason, I am calling you back to a place of alertness, not to fight with emotion, but to stand firm in awareness. You once thought that disputes only occur when two sides confront each other openly. But in spiritual reality, disputes often begin when one side advances silently while the other assumes everything is standing still. You continue living your everyday life, while the other side has already begun drawing new boundaries, setting new markers, and calling it order. And if you do not recognize what is happening, you will wake up one day to find your position diminished, not because you were weak, but because you were never told that you were already inside a dispute. I want you to know that my revealing this to you at this very moment is a sign of protection, not of danger. The most dangerous conflicts are those that unfold in darkness, when one party does not even realize that their rights are being encroached upon. But once the light is turned on, the rules of the game change. You are no longer someone being led blindly, you become someone who is aware. And awareness is the first step toward restoring order. My beloved child, I am not asking you to rush into confrontation, nor am I pressuring you to prove anything immediately. I only want you to stop calling this situation an impending loss. Each time you name it that way, you are unintentionally agreeing with an outcome I never ordained for you. Instead, call it by its true name. This is a dispute over the right to dwell, over position, over boundaries. And when you name it correctly, you begin to stand in the right place. Remember this deeply. My child, I do not place you in a position and then abandon you when that position is tested. If there is a dispute, it is because I am preparing you to learn how to guard what I have entrusted to you, not by your own strength, not by schemes or strategies, but by alertness, wisdom, and inner steadiness. You have lost nothing. On the contrary, you are being invited into a greater truth. You have authority, and that authority is now being tested by fire. My beloved child, there is a quiet question echoing in your heart that you have never spoken aloud, if nothing has happened yet. Why are you speaking to me now? I hear that question clearly. And I want you to understand this. I never warn you to make you live in fear. I warn you only when you are capable of standing firm. My speaking to you early is not a sign of danger drawing near, but evidence that you have entered a new stage, a stage where your awareness matters more than your comfort. If you were not ready, I would not have opened your eyes. If you did not have the authority to act, I would not have spoken. I tell you in advance because there are traps that are not set to attack, but to wait for you to walk into them yourself. Such traps only work when you are unaware of how close you are to them. Light comes early not to make you anxious, but to strip away the greatest advantage of anyone who seeks to interfere in your life: surprise. When you see clearly, you are no longer passive. When you recognize what is happening, you are no longer carried along by the unseen undercurrents of circumstance. I speak to you early because I am restoring initiative to you. before any step is quietly legitimized behind your back. My child, you need to understand something very important in my order. A warning is never a punishment. A warning is a sign of trust. I do not warn those who cannot do anything with the truth. I reveal only to those who have enough depth not to be crushed by it. If I waited until everything erupted before speaking, you would have no choice but to react in panic. But when I speak early, I am giving you time to observe, to discern, to adjust, and to stand in the right position before pressure arrives. Time is the advantage heaven is granting you right now. I know you once believed that knowing early meant worrying early. That is the mindset of a heart accustomed to carrying everything alone. I am teaching you a different way to know early so you can remain still. To know early so you do not rush. To know early so you are not forced into decisions you are not ready to make. When you know in advance, you do not need to argue. You do not need to prove anything. You only need to refrain from hastily handing over what was never meant to be given. And many dark plans collapse simply because the one they target is no longer in a hurry. My beloved child, some believe that power belongs to the one who makes the final decision, but in the spiritual realm, true power belongs to the one who is not forced into a decision at all. I tell you early so you are not cornered, not pushed into choosing between two unfavorable options. I want you to walk in calm awareness, not under frantic pressure, for pressure is always a tool of those who seek to seize control, while peace is the sign that you are standing within my order. I also speak to you early because I am training you for a new season, a season in which you no longer live by reaction, but by awareness. In the past, you may have been used to seeing problems only after they had already occurred, but I do not want you to live that way anymore. I want you to become someone who perceives the current before it becomes a flood, who senses the tremor before it becomes an earthquake. That is not suspicion, it is wisdom. And wisdom always walks one step ahead of events. My child, there is a deeper truth I want you to hold fast when I let you know in advance. I am not only protecting your home, I am protecting you. A home can be preserved or changed, but if your mind is swept into panic, if your inner strength is eroded by anxiety, then no matter where you remain, you will no longer be standing firm. I speak ahead of time so that you do not lose your peace. For peace is the deepest foundation of every true dwelling. A person without peace, even with four walls around them, still lives as one without a home. I want you to engrave this word deeply, not as mere text, but as an anchor for your soul. I will instruct you and teach you in the way you should go. I will counsel you with my eye upon you. Psalm 3:2-8. I do not only see what is happening, I also see what is about to happen. And when I counsel you early, it is because I desire that you pass through this season, not with loss, but with growth, not with fear, but with steadiness. My beloved child, understand this correctly. The fact that I am speaking to you now is not a sign that you are facing great trouble, but a sign that I am placing you in the position of a companion, not a passive subject. I do not want you merely to survive an upheaval. I want you to understand it, to stand above it, and to step out of it with eyes more open, a heart stronger, and authority more clearly defined. What I am doing within you at this moment is quieter than you imagine, yet far deeper than what you can currently see. My beloved child, this truth may awaken you, for not every hand that reaches out is meant to lift you up. Some hands are extended with calm expressions, gentle voices, and reasoning that sounds entirely appropriate. Yet beneath the garment of responsibility lies a desire for control. I want you to discern this clearly. True help never requires stripping you of your right to choose. Genuine care never demands your silence. And real stability is never built by pushing you out of the place of decision-making. When someone claims they are looking out for you, keeping you safe, or arranging things so you won't be tired, yet step by step they speak for you, decide for you, and steer your direction, that is no longer responsibility, it is counterfeit authority, disguised as morality. I expose this kind of power not with thunder, but with light. Light reveals how beautiful sounding words are used to conceal a very specific intention, choosing on your behalf. They speak of what is best, yet what is best always aligns with their own convenience. They speak of the long term, yet that long-term path leaves no room for your voice. They speak of stability, yet that stability requires you to hand over the keys of your life for them to hold. My child, remember, this true responsibility always enlarges a person. Counterfeit authority always shrinks them. You need to understand why such people often appear when you are at your most exhausted. When you are overwhelmed, they come with offers like, "Let me take care of it. Let me handle this for you. You can rest easy." And because you are tired, you may confuse rest with relinquishing authority. Rest means setting the burden down while keeping your hands on the steering wheel. Relinquishing authority means leaving the driver's seat altogether. The manipulator patiently waits for the moment you want to let go out of sheer exhaustion, then calls that surrender, trust. But, my child, trust never means abandoning the power of choice I have entrusted to you. I want you to look squarely at one crucial sign. A person with genuine responsibility will ask you before acting. A person with counterfeit authority will act first and inform you later, or worse, tell you that it's too late to change anything. True responsibility respects process. Counterfeit authority rushes time. True responsibility gives you full information. Counterfeit authority filters information to lead you to a conclusion they have already chosen. True responsibility welcomes questions. Counterfeit authority grows irritated when you ask. If you recognize these signs, do not blame yourself for having trusted. Simply acknowledge that you are standing before a boundary that must be named correctly. My beloved child, there is a deeper reason. Counterfeit authority loves to cloak itself in the language of being proactive. Being proactive sounds wise, while opposing it can easily be labeled irresponsible. They construct a narrative in which they are the mature one, and you are the one who must be guided. But I tell you, this maturity is not speaking for others. Maturity is helping others speak for themselves. Wisdom is not deciding in place of another. Wisdom is creating space for decisions to be made in the light. Anyone who makes you feel smaller, quieter, and more dependent, no matter how polished their words may be, is already stepping out of my order. You may ask me, why didn't I see this sooner, my child? Because counterfeit authority rarely appears alone. It often comes wrapped in shared history, past favors, and moments when they truly helped you. And that is precisely what makes discernment difficult. But remember this, a good deed in the past does not grant permission to strip authority in the present. No one has the right to decide for you simply because they once helped you. I do not assign authority according to a principle of indebtedness. Authority is entrusted according to calling and personal responsibility, not according to a ledger of favors. I also want you to recognize another subtle tactic. They often attach your resistance to negative emotions. If you ask questions, they say you are over-anxious. If you hesitate, they say you lack decisiveness. If you want more time to consider, they accuse you of delaying everything. Their aim is to make you doubt your own healthy intuition. But, my child, caution is not weakness. It is the mark of someone who understands that decisions carry consequences. I did not create you to react under pressure. I created you to act in the light. Let me be clear, I am not against help. I am against help being used as a lever of power. I am not against order. I am against a false order constructed to remove you from the center of your own life. When someone says, I just want stability for you, Look closely at whether that stability keeps you in a position of agency. If that stability requires you to remain silent, to sign without clarity, or to accept decisions that have already been finalized, then that is not my stability. My beloved child, I am calling you back to a simple yet powerful principle. No one has the right to demand that you surrender the authority I have entrusted to you, under any polished or noble pretext. True responsibility always lifts you so that you can stand more firmly. False power always pushes you down so that others can stand higher. When you learn to discern this, many words will lose their power over you. You will no longer be swept along by tone, pressured by artificial deadlines, or driven by the fear of being labeled uncooperative. I am not teaching you to distrust people. I am teaching you to honor yourself in the way I honor you. You are allowed to receive help without losing your right to choose. You are allowed to listen to advice without being obligated to follow it. You are allowed to say, "Let me think about it," without carrying guilt. When you stand firm in these truths, false power will have no ground to operate. And this is precisely why I am exposing it to you now, so that you no longer mistake control for responsibility, and no longer hand over your authority to hands I have not appointed. My beloved child, this truth may cause you to pause, because danger does not always come from what is unfamiliar. Many traps are built from familiarity, from relationships close enough that you lower your guard, familiar enough that you stop asking questions. When you grow accustomed to a voice, a face, a way of being present, it becomes easy to believe that they could never harm you. But I tell you, this familiarity does not automatically guarantee faithfulness, and it is precisely where you stop observing that false power begins to slip in. I want you to look closely at this mechanism. Familiarity creates a false sense of safety, a soft blanket that lulls your vigilance to sleep. You begin to overlook small details, a decision made faster than usual, a conversation you were not invited into, a statement that sounds reasonable but no longer seeks your consent. At first, it happens once, then twice, then it becomes a pattern. And once the pattern is established, replacement happens so smoothly that you do not notice your position being narrowed bit by bit. No one pushes you aside by force. You are gently led aside by habit. My child, false power prefers to hide within familiar relationships because there it is, questioned the least. A stranger must persuade you with evidence. Someone familiar needs only to rely on history. They recall the times they helped you, the moments they stood by you, the experiences you shared, not to build the present, but to purchase authority in the present. And if you do not discern this, you will confuse gratitude with an obligation to surrender power. I tell you this to set you free. Gratitude is never a permanent power of attorney. There is another subtlety I want you to recognize when familiarity dulls vigilance. You begin to censor your own voice. You hesitate to ask because you fear causing hurt. You hesitate to slow down because you fear being seen as uncooperative. You hesitate to say no because you fear disrupting harmony. And that very hesitation becomes the doorway through which decisions are made on your behalf. A manipulator does not need to steal your voice. They only need to make you withdraw it yourself. Once you have silenced yourself, false power can speak in your name without resistance. I know you do not want to distrust those who are close to you. I am not calling you to live in suspicion. I am calling you to live in the light. Light does not harm what is healthy. It only exposes what is not. If a relationship collapses simply because you ask questions, then that relationship was already standing on fragile ground. True closeness does not fear transparency. Only intentions that need concealment fear the light. And when you bring questions into a relationship, you are giving it the opportunity to prove its integrity, not condemning it. My beloved child, let me show you an important sign. Healthy familiarity strengthens you. Toxic familiarity diminishes you. After every interaction, ask yourself, do I feel clearer, or more confused? Do I feel more respected or more overshadowed? Do I feel more proactive or more dependent? These questions are not meant to judge others, but to protect you. For you cannot hold your rightful place if you do not recognize when that place is being encroached upon. I also want you to understand that prolonged familiarity can give rise to a kind of unofficial authority. Without titles, without documents, people can still exert control through habit, through influence, through always being the first to speak. And if you become accustomed to letting them speak first, think first, decide first, you will find it very difficult to reclaim your own rhythm. But, my child, the rhythm of your life does not belong to the loudest voice. It belongs to me, who created you with a rhythm uniquely your own. At times you will realize that those you trust the most are the very ones who do not want you to change. Not because they are evil, but because your growth disrupts the familiar order from which they have quietly benefited. When you grow, when you become clearer, when you begin to set boundaries, some people will feel inconvenienced, and they will call that inconvenience you've changed. You're difficult. You're not like you used to be. But I tell you, this maturity is not betrayal of the past. Maturity is faithfulness to the present into which I am leading you. My beloved child, I want to anchor your heart with a word so that you do not lose your way when facing familiarity. Be careful that no one takes you captive through philosophy and empty deceit, according to human tradition, according to the elemental principles of the world, and not according to Christ. Colossians 2:8. I do not speak this so that you would doubt every tradition or relationship, but so that you remember this: any influence that draws you away from my order must be examined, no matter where it comes from. I know, my child, that opening your eyes within familiar relationships can be painful. You will have to revisit things you once overlooked. You will have to accept that not every closeness leads you in the right direction. But I am with you in this process. I am not asking you to cut ties hastily. I am asking you to remain patiently alert. Alert enough to hear the whole sentence, not just the tone. Alert enough to watch actions, not just words. Alert enough to recognize when familiarity is being used as a tool. My beloved child, when you learn to stay alert, even within closeness, you will no longer fear being manipulated. You will not need to build high walls. You will simply need clear eyes. And when your eyes are clear, what does not belong to the light will reveal itself. Familiarity will no longer be a veil. It will become a test. That test will show you who truly respects your place, and who merely wants to stand in it instead of you, my beloved child. Now, I want you to look directly at the core of the matter. For if you do not correctly recognize the signs, you will continue to call intrusion normal and manipulation care. Those who seek to take your authority rarely come and say outright that they want to control your life. They come through signs that are very small, very reasonable, very ordinary, so small that if you are not alert, you will think they are merely personality, merely habit, merely a way of showing responsibility. But, my child, it is precisely these small signs, repeated over time, that most quietly erode your authority. The first sign I want you to remember is this: they begin to speak on your behalf. At first, the words seem harmless. They think that they'll probably agree. I know them well. Then, in front of others, they present thoughts, desires, and decisions as though they were your own voice. You may feel a mild discomfort, yet reassure yourself by thinking, they must understand me. My child, understanding you does not grant the right to represent you. When someone habitually speaks for you without asking you, they are testing your response. If you remain silent, they will take another step forward. The second sign is that they begin to decide for you in small matters. They arrange things, choose the timing, reach agreements with others, and only afterward inform you as though everything were already settled. They often use phrases like, "I did it to save time. I thought you'd find it convenient. If I asked you, it would take too long." And if you react, they appear surprised, even hurt, as though you were being ungrateful. But I tell you, this speed is never a valid reason to strip someone of their authority. Anyone who treats your participation as an inconvenience does not respect your place. The third sign is more subtle. They begin to control information. You no longer hear the full story, only the portion they choose for you to hear. Important details are mentioned later, brushed over, or not mentioned at all. When you ask further, they answer vaguely or redirect the conversation. And if you persist, they will say that you are overthinking, worrying too much, or making things complicated. My child, a transparent person is not afraid of questions, only one who is steering the narrative for their own ends, fears light shining on every detail. I want you to pay attention to one more very important sign. They create a false sense of urgency. They say, "We must decide now. There's no time left. If we don't do this now, we'll lose the opportunity." Urgency is the strongest tool for seizing authority, because it pushes you to act before you have time to discern. But I tell you this, what belongs to me never requires you to decide in panic. Wisdom always gives you enough space to breathe, to pray, to weigh matters carefully. When someone repeatedly pushes you into haste, understand this clearly: they are trying to bypass the boundary of discernment I have placed within you. My beloved child, there is another sign that is very easy to overlook. They cause you to doubt yourself, not through direct insults, but through repeated remarks such as, "You're not very familiar with these things. You tend to hesitate. You're too emotional. It's better to let someone with experience handle this." Gradually, you begin to wonder whether you are truly capable. And when you doubt yourself, you will easily hand over authority to others without them ever needing to fight for it. My child, anyone who needs you to believe you are lesser than they are in order to decide in your place has already stepped outside my order. I know that as you read this, you may begin to look back at many relationships and recognize familiar pieces. Do not panic. Discernment is not for accusation, but for awakening. I am not calling you into battle with people. I am calling you out of a passive role. When you recognize these signs, you do not need to confront aggressively, nor do you need to offer long explanations. What you need is to stop allowing the next small steps. Many plans of control collapse simply because the one being targeted no longer cooperates in silence. My beloved child, I want you to understand this clearly. Your authority is not lost simply because you once allowed others to go too far. Authority is only lost when you believe you no longer have it. The moment you pause, ask questions, request clarity, ask for time, ask to be included, order begins to be restored. Those who respect you will adjust. Those who do not will reveal themselves. And both outcomes are light. I am not teaching you to become hard or closed off. I am teaching you to become grounded. You do not need to defend yourself against everyone. You simply must not hand over the keys of your life to anyone I have not appointed. When you keep your boundaries, you can still love. When you keep your authority, you can still remain humble. These two are not in conflict. They strengthen one another in a mature life. My beloved child, let these signs become tools of protection, not burdens of suspicion. I want you to walk gently yet alert, soft yet unbent, open yet not blindly led. When you learn to recognize those who seek to take authority, You no longer fear being overtaken, and when fear withdraws, your authority naturally rises. This is an important step as you go deeper into what I am about to reveal, where you not only keep your place, but learn to stand firmly in it with peace and clarity. My beloved child, this truth may catch in your throat, not because it is new, but because it touches the very place you have been avoiding for a long time. I know why you have been silent. I know you were not silent because you were weak, nor because you did not see what was happening. You were silent because you were tired. You were silent because you had grown accustomed to keeping everything stable on your own. You were silent because you did not want another collision, another explanation, another cycle of conversation that drained you dry. And because I know this, I do not blame you, but I will not allow you to continue misunderstanding your own silence. My child, your silence did not begin today. It was formed through times when you spoke and were not heard, times when you expressed yourself and were dismissed, times when you tried to explain, only to receive weary looks from others. Slowly, you learned a false lesson. Staying quiet causes fewer problems. You began choosing outward calm over inward truth. You thought that if you said nothing, everything would simply pass. But my child, some things do not pass when you remain silent. They merely change direction and return with greater force. I want you to understand this clearly. Your silence is not agreement. But many people have learned to treat it as if it were. And when you remain silent for too long, others begin writing the story forward without asking you anymore. They grow accustomed to deciding without your participation. They grow accustomed to acting first and later calling it for convenience. You never signed off on being replaced, but exhaustion kept you from objecting. And in the human world, the absence of objection is often mistaken for consent. My beloved child, I know you dislike conflict. You are not someone who enjoys arguments. You fear that if you speak up, things will become tense, relationships will fracture, and the atmosphere will grow heavy. You chose the role of the easygoing one, the understanding one, the one who knows how to yield. But I ask you an honest question: how much have you yielded at the cost of your own place, when peace exists only because you continually swallow your own voice? It is no longer peace. It is suppression waiting to break. There are wounds within you that you have never named, yet they still govern your reactions. Times when you were misunderstood for speaking truth. Times when you were labeled difficult simply for asking questions. Times when you were distanced because you would not conform to others' expectations. Those memories taught you that silence equals safety. But my child, that kind of safety only helps you avoid immediate friction. It does not protect the authority I placed within you. And those who seek to take your authority understand this very well. I touch an even deeper truth. You have grown accustomed to adjusting yourself to fit others. You tell yourself, let it go. They probably didn't mean harm. I'm overthinking. You became someone who always finds reasons to understand others, yet denies yourself the right to feel discomfort. You became the keeper of harmony for everyone except yourself. And when you repeatedly set your own needs aside, you unintentionally send a dangerous message. Your voice does not matter. Those looking to decide in your place will quickly recognize that message. My beloved child, I did not create you to live in a state of shrinking. I did not give you awareness, intuition, and a voice only for you to bury them beneath a layer of false safety. Your silence does not please me when it is born of fear or exhaustion. I am not calling you to be loud. I am calling you to be honest. Honest with yourself. Honest with what you are feeling. Honest with the boundaries you need so that you are not violated. That honesty may disturb the surface, but it saves your soul from being eroded from within. I want you to remember this word as a mirror by which you examine yourself. There is a time to be silent and a time to speak. Ecclesiastes 3:7. Silence is not always wisdom, and speaking is not always wrong. The issue is not whether you speak or remain quiet, but the timing and the motive. When you are silent to avoid reckless conflict, that can be wisdom. But when you are silent to avoid facing the truth, that silence becomes a chain. I am calling you to discern the difference, so that you do not continue to bind yourself with prolonged endurance. My child, I know you fear that if you speak up now, others will say, "Why didn't you say something earlier?" But I tell you, this now is precisely the time you can speak, because now you understand. I do not judge yesterday's version of you by the light you carry today. I see your journey. I see how long you have endured, how hard you have tried to keep everything intact, how weary you have become carrying the role of peacemaker for everyone. And because I see it all, I say to you now, the time has come when you no longer need to be silent. I am not telling you to confront aggressively. I am not urging you to explain everything all at once. I only want you to stop misunderstanding your own silence. Your silence is not consent. And from this day forward, you do not have to live as though it were. When you begin to realize that you have the right to speak without asking permission, a burden will fall from your shoulders. And when that burden falls, you will see that many of the things you have feared for so long never held the power you imagined. This is the first step in reclaiming your place, not through shouting, but through awareness and honesty with yourself. My child, understand this: the moment you begin to raise your voice, even if it trembles, even if your words are imperfect, the old order around you will begin to shake, not because you seek conflict, but because truth always unsettles structures built on control and silence. For a long time, you have grown accustomed to keeping the peace, yielding, swallowing what weighed heavily on your heart. You convinced yourself that silence was wisdom, that not speaking preserved harmony, that enduring a little longer would eventually make everything right. What you did not see was that, within that prolonged silence, your soul was being compressed, your inner voice stifled, and the life I placed within you was not allowed to flow freely. When you begin to speak, you are not merely expressing an opinion, you are restoring the order I established for you from the beginning. I know what you are afraid of. You fear that if you speak, others will be displeased. You fear that if you set boundaries, you will be labeled selfish. You fear that if you stop accommodating the desires of others, you will lose acceptance, affection, or the sense of safety you have clung to for so long. But listen to me carefully. My child, any peace purchased at the cost of losing yourself is not the peace that comes from me. It is only a temporary calm before a greater fracture. When you speak, those who have benefited from your silence will feel uncomfortable. They may say you have changed, that you have become rigid, that you are no longer the same. What they are truly confronting is the fact that they no longer get to decide for you. You need to know this: speaking does not make you rebellious. It makes you mature in me. Children remain silent because they fear abandonment. The mature speak because they know they have a place. When you begin to articulate what you feel, what you need, and what you can no longer accept, you are stepping out of roles others assigned to you. Those roles may have been the agreeable one, the one who always sacrifices, the one who causes no trouble, but they are not the names I have given you. I call you my son, my daughter, one entrusted with discernment, with choice, and with the right to live in truth. When you speak, you are returning to me what has always belonged to me within you. There will be moments when, after you speak, the atmosphere becomes tense. There will be uncomfortable silences, probing looks, half-spoken words that make you question whether you did something wrong. In those moments, I do not want you to retreat too quickly. Do not rush to apologize simply to soothe someone else's discomfort when you have done nothing wrong. Do not shrink your words out of habit, because you are used to placing others' emotions above your own truth. I am very near to you in those moments. I stand beside you when you tremble, yet choose honesty. I am present in every breath as you learn to stand firm without attacking or over-explaining. My presence is what holds you steady, not human approval. My child, you also need to understand that raising your voice does not mean saying everything, saying it all the time, or speaking in anger. I am teaching you a new kind of language, the language of clarity, calmness, and truth. It is a language that does not need to shout in order to be heard, and does not need to wound in order to protect itself. When you speak from a heart that has been healed, your words carry the weight of truth rather than the heat of reaction. There are boundaries that need to be set only once, in calmness, and if others choose not to respect them, the silence that follows will carry a very different meaning. It will no longer be submission, but a conscious choice. I give you the wisdom to know when to speak, when to pause, and when to walk away. My child, do not be surprised if, when you begin to speak, some relationships change their shape or come to an end. Not every bond is built on genuine love. Some relationships exist only because one side has been silent for too long. When that silence ends, the artificial structure loses its support. This is not loss, it is release. I do not take away what truly belongs to you. I remove only what has been hindering your growth. Those who are meant to walk with you into the next season will not be threatened by your voice. They will listen. They will engage. And they will respect the boundaries you set, even if they do not yet fully understand them. I know you are relearning how to trust your inner voice. There was a time when you doubted your own perceptions, because so often you were told that you were overthinking, too sensitive, or making a big deal out of nothing. But I tell you this, I placed deep sensitivity within you, not so that you would suffer more, but so that you would discern more clearly. When you speak from that deep place, you are partnering with me in restoring truth. And truth, though it may disturb at first, will ultimately bring freedom. As it is written, you will know the truth, and the truth will set you free. Therefore, my child, continue to raise your voice, not to prove your worth, but because you already know you have worth. Speak the space you need, the pace you need, and the path you are called to walk. Each time you choose to speak instead of disappearing, you reclaim a part of your soul that was once forgotten. Each time you stand firm in truth, you testify that the power of control no longer rules over you. I am leading you out of the shadow of enforced silence and into the light of agreement with yourself and with me. And you will see this when your voice is restored to its rightful place. Your life will also begin to settle into a new order, an order of freedom, of peace, and of wholeness. My beloved child, listen carefully to this, for many have misunderstood my call in moments like these. I am not calling you to rise in order to accuse you for the days you were silent. I do not look at you with reproach, nor do I keep record of the times you avoided conflict. I look at you with complete understanding, because I know you were silent not from a lack of courage, but because you used yourself as a cushion to keep everything else from breaking. And now, I do not come to judge your past. I come to open your future. I call you to rise not so that you may become someone else, but so that you may return to yourself. There is a version of you that was pushed backward by too many compromises, too many moments of shrinking, too many times of telling yourself, it's better to let it go. That version did not die, it was simply obscured. And I am calling you now because that version needs to be named. To rise, my child, is not violent resistance. It is the act of resetting the boundary where you were moved back without even realizing it. I know you fear that if you rise, everything will fall into chaos. You fear losing harmony, being misunderstood, being labeled difficult, unstable, or no longer easy to deal with. But let me tell you the truth, true order is never built on self-erasure. True harmony does not require your disappearance. And relationships that survive only when you are silent are not places where you are meant to grow. I am not calling you to break everything apart. I am calling you to put back into alignment what has been displaced. When I say rise, I am not telling you to confront with emotion. I am speaking of a new inner posture, the posture of one who knows they have the right to exist. The posture of one who no longer apologizes for legitimate needs. The posture of one who no longer rushes to explain in order to be accepted. To rise is when you begin to say very simple, very clear sentences. I need time. I do not agree yet. This requires my involvement. These words do not carry anger, but they carry boundaries. And boundaries are the language that order understands. My beloved child, I know you have grown accustomed to standing back, observing, and adjusting yourself to the current around you. But I am leading you into a season where the adjustment must happen in the opposite direction. The current must recalibrate to respect your presence. This will confuse some people. Some will test you with startled looks, with heavy silence, with ambiguous words. Do not rush to explain. Do not rush to make them feel at ease. You are not obligated to keep others comfortable at the cost of betraying your own truth. Discomfort, at times, is simply a sign that order is being rearranged. I also want you to understand that standing up is not a single moment, but a process. There will be days when you can speak one clear sentence, and other days when you feel the urge to retreat. Do not condemn yourself for this. I do not measure your growth by speed, but by direction. Each time you choose not to remain silent when your voice is needed, even in a small way, you lay another brick in a new foundation. That foundation is quiet, but it is strong. And once it is laid, you will no longer be easily pushed back. My beloved child, I call you to stand because I see what will happen if you do not. Prolonged silence does not preserve peace. It only stockpiles tension. Endurance stretched too long does not make you stronger. It numbs you. I do not want you to wake up one day and realize you have lived too long in a life smaller than what I intended. I want you to wake up and know that you are living at your true size, not loud, not overpowering, but whole. I also want you to know that when you stand, I stand with you. You are not entering this season alone. There will be moments when you tremble, because reclaiming your place after a long silence always carries a sense of unfamiliarity. But that trembling is not a sign of weakness. It is the sign of a muscle that has gone unused for a long time beginning to work again. Let it tremble. I am there to keep you from falling. My beloved child, there will be people who try to pull you back into your old position by invoking the past. You were never like this before. Why are you doing this? Everything was fine. Do not argue with their memories. You do not need to persuade them of your change. Real change does not need to defend itself. It needs to be lived. When you remain steady with quiet peace, backward-pulling words will gradually lose their weight. Those who respect you will adjust. Those who do not will reveal themselves. Both outcomes will make your path lighter. I call you to stand, not so that you seize power from others, but so that you reclaim the authority that was neglected within yourself. The right to say yes when you truly agree. The right to say no without excessive explanation. The right to say wait when things are not yet clear. These rights do not make you difficult. They make you healthy. And a healthy person does not need to shout to be heard. My beloved child, when you stand in the way, I am leading you. You will discover something unexpected. Many of the fears that once kept you silent will dissolve more quickly than you imagined. Not because circumstances immediately change, but because you have changed your position within them. You are no longer beneath the weight of others' expectations. You are standing upright in the light of truth. From that place, you will see more clearly the next steps I am about to show you. This is why I do not condemn you. I do not need you to bow your head to the past. I need you to lift your head toward the future. Your silence was never consent, and your standing today is not rebellion, but return. A return to the place I prepared for you from the beginning. And when you stand there, many things that were once unclear will begin to come into focus. My child, I want to lead you into a deeper level of freedom, a place where you no longer ask permission to be who you truly are, where truth no longer waits for the approval of others before it can be spoken. For a long time, you have grown used to reading faces, listening to tones, weighing reactions before daring to live according to what you know to be true in your heart. You learned to bend truth to fit others' expectations, not because you were deceitful, but because you feared the cost of honesty. But my child, truth was never created to be approved. It was created to liberate. When you understand this, you will release the burden of pleasing everyone, and your soul will begin to breathe again. I see the quiet negotiations within you, the times you knew you needed to say no but said, "Let me think about it." The times you needed to leave but stayed out of fear of being judged. The times you needed to slow down but forced yourself to keep pace with others. Each time, you were not merely delaying a decision, you were delaying yourself. I did not create you to live suspended in that state. I formed you with an inner axis, the axis of truth, of conscience, of calling, so that when you stand upon it, you do not have to tilt under any pressure. The truth within you does not need to be decorated to sound pleasant. It only needs to be lived with humility and steadiness. My child, some people will react strongly when you stop asking their permission to live truthfully, not because you are wrong, but because your presence in truth forces them to confront their own compromises. Truth is like light. It does not attack darkness, but darkness cannot remain when light is turned on. So do not be surprised if, when you stop asking permission, some call you changed, distant, or no longer easy to control. You have not become difficult, you have become clear. And clarity always causes relationships built on ambiguity to reveal their true nature. I also want you to understand that living in truth does not mean you must explain every decision you make. Some choices only need to be lived, not justified. When you explain too much, you unconsciously hand others the power to judge, but that power does not belong to them. I do not require that everyone understand you correctly. I simply invite you to walk faithfully with what I have planted in your heart. There are paths that only become illuminated after you have taken the first few steps. And if you stand still waiting for validation, you will never see the next light. My child, I am healing within you a deep belief that you do not need to disappear in order to be loved. You do not need to shrink your dreams, soften your emotions, or hide your uniqueness to keep a place in someone else's life. True love does not require you to erase yourself. And if there is any affection that only exists when you stay silent, when you accommodate, when you abandon your own truth, then that affection was never built on a solid foundation. I do not call you into bonds that wear you down. I call you into relationships where truth is honored, even when it is not comfortable to hear. You are learning to plant your feet firmly on the ground, not the ground of fear, but the ground of identity. When you stand steady in that identity, you will notice that many of the anxieties that once haunted you begin to dissolve. You no longer have to guess what others want in order to become acceptable. You no longer have to chase standards that keep shifting. You return to the core question I have always whispered within you: is this true for you? When you are honest with that question, I will lead you step by step, not faster than you can carry, but never slower than the moment that calls for change. I know there are days when you still waver, moments when you wonder whether you are being too firm, too decisive, or simply too different. In those moments, I do not rebuke you. I only invite you back into my presence and ask you to remember how exhausted you once were from trying to become a version of yourself that was easier for others to accept. Remember how much peace you traded away just to preserve an outward sense of calm. The truth I am leading you to live may not make everything smooth right away, but it will make everything upright. And what is upright, over time, always brings a deep and lasting rest. My child, let the truth within you stand tall, even when your voice trembles. Let your life speak what your mouth no longer wishes to justify. I do not need you to be perfect in your honesty. I only need you to be sincere. Each day you choose to live a little truer, speak a little more honestly, and stand a little more firmly. I am opening before you a new space, a space of inner freedom, where you are no longer driven by the fear of displeasing others, losing your place, or losing your worth. You lose nothing by living truthfully. You only shed chains you were never created to carry. And when you look back, you will see this no longer asking permission to live in truth does not make you lonely. It brings you to the right people, at the right time, in the very version I called you to become. I am with you on this journey not to push you, but to support you, not to demand, but to liberate. Walk forward, my child, with your inner axis restored. Truth does not need permission to exist, and neither do you. Beloved child, there is a boundary many do not recognize until they have gone too far. The boundary between what is lawful in the eyes of people and what is legitimate in the eyes of heaven. I want you to pause carefully here, because what I am about to say will release you from a fear that has quietly weighed on your heart for a long time. You have seen the documents, the signatures, the procedures, the declarations that appear entirely legal, and at times you have wondered, if everything is legitimate like this, do I still have any right to speak? But hear me, my child, not everything that is lawful carries authority, and not everything that is signed is recognized before me, in my order. The law of heaven is not bent by human cleverness. There are documents written with the agreement of many, yet they remain empty before me because they are built on distorted motives. There are signatures placed quickly, yet they carry no spiritual weight because they do not honor the position of true authority. You need to understand this so your heart no longer trembles before things that wear the appearance of power but have no roots in truth. I do not deny the existence of human law. I am simply telling you that it is not the ultimate authority. My child, look again at this profound truth. Human law often operates by form, while heaven's law operates by essence. People look at signatures. I look at motives. People look at seals. I look at entrustment. People ask, who signed? I ask, who was entrusted? And very often, those answers do not align. When that misalignment occurs, no matter how complete the paperwork appears, it stands on unstable ground. For what has not been entrusted by me will, sooner or later, have to be returned. I know you have felt powerless watching things arranged behind your back, legalized through technical language, presented as a reality that cannot be reversed. But remember this, my child, your authority does not begin with documents, nor does it end with them. Your authority begins with my entrustment, with the position I placed you in, with the territory I permitted you to stand upon. Documents only have value when they faithfully reflect that entrustment. When they contradict it, they are no longer instruments of order, they become instruments of manipulation. There are people who are very skilled at using human rules and procedures to disguise the violation of boundaries. They say that everything followed proper procedure, that someone with authority has already signed off, that this can no longer be changed. But, my child, Procedure should never be used to remove the very person who ought to be present in a decision. True authority is never exercised by hiding those directly affected from the table of discussion. When you are excluded from the process, yet still forced to bear the consequences, that is a very clear sign that human law is being used for the wrong purpose. I want you to understand why I am speaking of this now. It is very easy for you to lose confidence when you are faced with structures that sound too big, too complex, or too official. You may think you are too small to question, too uninformed to speak up, too alone to do anything other than accept it. But, my child, I do not measure authority by the size of a system. I measure it by whether you are standing in the place where you belong. One person standing rightly before me carries more weight than an entire stack of documents built on distorted motives. I also want you to recognize that the law of heaven does not operate through haste. Many documents are signed in a rush because urgency is the easiest way to avoid discernment, when there is no time to reflect, no time to ask again, no time to invite those concerned into the process. Decisions are made in a state that lacks light, and what is born in darkness is always afraid of the light. If a process cannot withstand questions, cannot withstand slowing down, cannot withstand your presence, then that process is exposing itself. My beloved child, there is one truth I want you to engrave deeply within you. The law of heaven always protects those who are unjustly pushed aside. When you are excluded from a decision that directly affects your life and your place, I do not consider it a small matter. I do not stand with the one who acts faster. I stand with the one whose rights have been violated. And even if human beings temporarily call something finished, I still have the authority to call it not yet recognized. For ultimate recognition does not rest in human hands. I am not saying this so that you would despise rules or act without wisdom. I am saying this so that your spirit does not collapse when things that appear official seem to rise against you. You do not need to shout that everything is wrong. You only need to stand firm in the truth that there is a higher order observing the entire process. That order is not blinded by seals or signatures. It sees through form to discern substance. My child, many have lost all hope simply because they believed paperwork was the final voice. But I want you to understand this paperwork is only the voice of a system, while my voice is the voice of truth. When those two voices collide, what remains standing is not what is written more elegantly, but what is positioned more rightly. And you, if you are standing in the place I have assigned to you, even if you do not yet see immediate change, you are standing on a foundation that cannot be erased. I am not telling you to fight back in your own strength, nor am I requiring you to understand every clause or every detail. I only ask that you do not withdraw inwardly simply because you see things you cannot control. Your rights do not disappear just because someone else moved more quickly. They may be obscured, but what is obscured can be revealed when light arrives. This is why I am leading you step by step, so that you do not underestimate your position simply because others try to make it look small. My beloved child, when human documents collide with the law of heaven, what prevails is not cleverness, but truth. And truth does not need you to defend it with panic. It only needs you not to run away. Stand still in this awareness. What I have not permitted cannot stand for long. And when the appointed time comes, what has been built by human hands will have to give way to what has been established by me. You do not need to reclaim anything through force. You only need to remain in the right place so that truth can do its own work. My child, as you step more deeply into freedom, what you will encounter will not only be open opposition, but also subtle distortions, words that sound as though they are for your good, yet are actually meant to pull you back into your old place. Some people will not shout, threaten, or forbid. They will simply sow guilt, a sense of indebtedness, the feeling that you are being too much for daring to live in truth. They may say, I only want what's best for you. You've changed. You're being selfish. What you're doing hurts others. Or you're not like you used to be. And right here you will be tested. Will you stand firm in the inner alignment I am restoring within you? Or will you rush to apologize just to keep the peace? I want you to recognize this. Distortions often aim at your old wounds, places where you once feared abandonment, longed for acceptance, learned to survive by pleasing others. The enemy does not need to break you with a single hard blow. It only needs to repeat a quiet whisper that you are not worthy of freedom, that you will lose everything if you remain steadfast. That is why, my child, I am teaching you a sacred skill. Not every uncomfortable feeling is a sign that you are wrong. Sometimes it is simply a sign that you are stepping out of a cage. Freedom, at first, always feels disorienting, because you have been so accustomed to change that when they are gone, you feel as though something is missing. But what is missing is not love. It is control that once disguised itself as care. Listen to me closely. There is a very clear difference between love and demand. Love will respect your boundaries, even when it does not fully understand them. Love will ask questions. Listen, and accept that you have your own journey. But demand will require you to explain endlessly, to prove yourself repeatedly, to ask permission again and again. Demand makes you feel that you are only safe when you comply, and when you stop asking for permission, demand will change its strategy. Instead of commanding, it will play the victim instead of confronting. It will induce guilt instead of saying, "You must." It will say, "If you do this, it means you don't love me." My child, do not let tenderness turn into self-erasure. I want you to learn how to stand firm without turning into stone. Standing firm does not mean becoming cold or hardened. Standing firm means knowing who you are, knowing where your boundaries lie, knowing what is true to your soul, and refusing to let manipulated emotions govern your decisions. You can speak in a calm voice and still remain resolute. You can love and still say no. You can show respect without stepping back. You can have compassion without allowing others to steer your life. For, my child, boundaries do not stand against love. Boundaries protect love from being twisted into a tool. There will be times when you are misunderstood. There will be times when others retell your story in a way that serves their interests. They may assign motives to you that you never had. They may choose to remember only the moments when you disappointed them, while forgetting the entire journey of sacrifice you carried. And this will hurt, because you are someone whose heart naturally considers others. But I want you to remember this. You are not called to manage how others interpret you. You are called to guard your own heart and your faithfulness before me. You cannot live rightly if you are constantly trying to control other people's narratives. Truth does not need you to defend it with panic. Truth only needs you to live steadily in the light. In moments when your image is distorted, do not rush to explain yourself to everyone, not because you are arrogant, but because you are learning to choose carefully where your words are sown. Some ears do not want to hear. Some hearts have already decided to misunderstand. Some conversations are nothing more than traps designed to pull you into endless self-defense. My child, I will give you the wisdom to know when to speak, when to remain silent, and when to walk away. There are battles you win by never entering them. There are doors you close with a powerful silence. And there are times when all you need to say to me is, "Lord, you know my heart," and then continue doing what is right. I also want you to see this when you stop asking for permission. You are setting a new precedent for your own life. You are telling your soul, "I will no longer betray you." You are telling your faith, "I will not trade my peace for acceptance." You are telling your past, "You no longer get to write my script." And you are telling your future, "I come to you with truth, not with a mask, This is a shift far greater than small arguments. This is me restoring dignity within you, dignity that is not arrogant, but unshakable, dignity that does not seek conflict, yet does not bow to distortion. And my child, when you stand firm in this way, you will gradually notice something surprising. Your calmness will expose the manipulations around you. When you do not panic, do not fear, do not rush to explain, do not hurry to soothe other people's discomfort, you reveal a deeper truth that many things once called affection were actually control. Do not be afraid when this becomes visible. I do not expose things so that you may hate. I expose them so that you may be free. And when you are free, you will know how to love without being controlled, give without being exploited, and serve without being drained dry. Let me place a scripture within you as a marker for this stretch of the journey, so that whenever distortion arises, you are not swept away by emotion, but are anchored to my standard. Proverbs 2:9-5 says, "The fear of man lays a snare, but whoever trusts in the Lord is safe." My child, the greatest trap is not what others say. The trap is the fear within you that drives you back to asking for permission, back to pleasing others, back to losing your inner alignment. But when you trust in me, you are kept safe. Safe, not because people fall silent, but because your heart is no longer ruled by them. Therefore, my child, move forward as one who no longer asks permission to live in truth. If you need to speak, speak with truth and grace. If you need to be silent in peace, not in fear. If you need to leave, leave without carrying guilt. I am with you. I uphold you. I teach you how to stand firm amid distortion without losing the tenderness of your heart. And you will see this when you live in truth. What belongs to me will come to you, not through force, but through the orchestration of grace. You will no longer need permission to become who I have called you to be. You only need to obey, to walk forward, and to trust that I will guard you in the light of that truth. My child, when you have learned to stand firm in truth and no longer ask permission to live rightly, I will lead you into a new season, a season of separation and refinement. This is not a time of punishment, nor a sign that you have failed. Rather, it is the natural result of faithfulness. When the light is turned on, everything that does not belong to the light reveals itself. When you choose to walk straight, crooked paths begin to diverge. And when you no longer compromise, I will show you what and who can truly walk with you into the next stretch of the journey. Top of form, bottom of form, the refining does not always arrive with noise. Sometimes it unfolds quietly as a gentle drifting apart, a rhythm of life that no longer aligns, a conversation that suddenly feels strained, or a bond that was once close but can no longer reach the deeper layers within you. You may find yourself asking, "Have I changed too much, my child?" I tell you this, you have grown. And when you grow, old garments no longer fit. I do not cut away to cause you pain. I loosen and remove, so you may breathe freely in the new form I am shaping for you. In this season, you will be tested at the most delicate point. Do you believe that what I keep for you is better than what I take away? For there are relationships, habits, roles, and even old dreams that once helped you survive a certain season, but now hinder you from moving forward. You once leaned on them as supports, and so when I begin to shake them, you feel unsteady. But my child, I do not remove your support to make you fall. I transfer your support from what is temporary to me, the one who does not change. As it is written, trust in the Lord with all your heart, and do not lean on your own understanding. In all your ways acknowledge him, and he will make straight your paths. Proverbs 3:5-6. I know you have a faithful heart. You attach deeply, You remember for a long time, and you often blame yourself when something is no longer as it once was. But I want you to learn a new discernment. Faithfulness does not mean clinging to what I have told you to release. Faithfulness is walking in step with my present call, even when that requires leaving what is familiar. There are moments when your faithfulness is not measured by how long you stay, but by how quickly you obey. When you try to hold on to what I am bringing to an end, you are not protecting love, you are only prolonging weariness. During this season of refining, you will also realize that not every empty space needs to be filled immediately. You have grown accustomed to filling silence with activity, filling loneliness with relationships, filling anxiety with plans. But I invite you to remain with the emptiness for a while, not so you suffer, but so I may work. Empty spaces are where I quiet the noise, refine your motives, and teach you to listen more deeply. If you rush to fill them, you may bring into your life things I have not sent. But if you are patient, you will see this. What comes from me always arrives in the right form, at the right time, and never demands that you trade away your peace. My child, do not be afraid when you notice that the list of those who remain is shorter than before. I do not build your life by numbers, but by the quality of presence. Those I keep with you will not require constant explanations. They will not see your honesty as a threat. They will not love you only when you comply. They will respect your boundaries and rejoice in your growth. And for those who cannot continue with you, I do not call you to resentment. I call you to bless and to move on. True maturity does not burn bridges. It simply chooses not to linger on a bridge that has already fulfilled its purpose. I also want you to know that the refining does not happen only outside of you. It is taking place within you as well. I am filtering old motives, the need for approval, the fear of abandonment, habits of control, and even the ways you once protected yourself that are no longer fitting. I do not expose these things to shame you. I expose them to heal you. Each time you notice an old reaction rising and you choose to pause, to breathe, and to ask me, where is this coming from? You are cooperating with grace. Sanctification is not about hiding your weak places. It is about allowing me to touch them. There will come a day when you look back and see that this season of refining rescued you from exhausting cycles. You no longer have to perform in order to belong. You no longer have to stay silent to keep the peace. You no longer have to over-explain to be understood. You walk lighter because your baggage is lighter. You love more deeply because you no longer love from fear. And you live more truthfully because the inner axis has been firmly realigned. Then you will understand that what I took away did not make you poorer, it made you richer in freedom. My child, trust me in this season. If I am refining, it is because I am preparing. If I am narrowing, it is so I may bring focus. If I am emptying, it is so I may fill you with something better. You are not being left behind, you are being led forward. And as you continue with faithfulness, you will see this. You do not walk alone. I go before you. I am beside you. And I am within you, leading you through the refining into a wider place, where you can live fully in truth, in peace, and in love that is no longer conditional. My beloved child, there is one truth I want you to engrave deeply within your heart so that you will no longer be frightened by what is unfolding. Truth does not need you to shout in order to defend itself. Truth has the power to create its own witnesses. When light begins to shine, you will notice something very unusual happening. People you never relied on, people you never tried to persuade, suddenly begin to see, not because you told your story, but because truth itself speaks within their conscience. This is how I carry out my justice, quietly, precisely, and without dependence on human noise. You once believed that if you did not speak up, No one would ever know what truly happened. You feared that if you did not defend yourself, the story would continue to be written in a way that worked against you. But my child, hear me, truth is not erased by silence. It simply waits for the right moment to be recognized. When misaligned actions repeat themselves, when words no longer match deeds, when decisions are made without the presence that should accompany them, the human conscience begins to stir, even if people do not call it conscience. They simply feel that something is not right. And from that unease, the first question is born. I want you to pay close attention. True exposure does not begin with accusation, but with a question. One person starts to wonder why everything feels rushed. Another notices that today's story does not match yesterday's. Someone else suddenly remembers a small detail they once overlooked. None of them intended to stand on your side from the beginning. But truth does not need sides, it needs light. And light does not discriminate, it shines on everything. My beloved child, manipulators always believe they control the entire narrative. Yet they forget one thing: they cannot control the memory and intuition of others. People may be guided for a moment, but they cannot be deceived forever when the pieces no longer fit. A word spoken earlier contradicts a later action. A reason once given no longer aligns with reality. A sense of urgency suddenly becomes suspicious. And right there, truth begins to raise its own witnesses, not witnesses for you, but witnesses for itself. Understand this: the witnesses I speak of are not always those who openly defend you. Often, they are simply people who no longer believe the old story. They stop cooperating. They slow down. They no longer push with the same enthusiasm. And that slowing, even when it is barely noticeable, is enough to disrupt a plan built in darkness. Deception always depends on speed to survive. When speed is broken, light gains time to shine. My child, I know you have asked yourself, does anyone see this? I tell you, many have seen it, is just that they have not yet understood. And I am doing my work within them. Not through pressure, but through gradual awareness. Some begin to notice inconsistencies in behavior. Others feel uneasy being asked to carry out things they do not fully understand. Some begin to ask questions they were once afraid to ask. And when questions arise, false silence begins to crack. You must know this: truth never stands alone. It is like a seed planted in the ground. When the season comes, it rises. And people are surprised because they no longer remember who planted it. I am showing you a process invisible to the naked eye. Truth is moving from one person to another, from one awareness to the next, quietly yet persistently. Private conversations begin to surface, where people say to one another, something doesn't feel right, and those small words become the foundation for a greater unveiling. My beloved child, do not grow impatient when you do not yet see anyone publicly standing up for you. I do not need a crowd to do my work. I need the right people, at the right time. When witnesses are not yet fully aware, exposure that comes too early only creates chaos. But when awareness has matured, a single look, a single question, a single recalled detail is enough to shake the entire structure of lies. Truth does not attack from the front, it collapses things from the inside. I also want you to understand that some will recognize the truth, but will not dare to speak immediately. Do not judge them. Fear of losing position, relationships, or safety causes hesitation. But that hesitation does not erase what they have seen. And when the moment comes that they can no longer pretend, truth will find its way forward. You do not need to push them, you only need to stand firm, so that when they step out, you are no longer standing in a place of weakness. My child, let me remind you of something important. Do not turn truth into a weapon. When you use truth to attack, you make it resemble the very thing you are resisting. Truth is strongest when it stands still and allows light to do its own work. You do not need to gather witnesses for yourself. You only need to refrain from distorting the truth to protect yourself. When you keep your heart upright, truth will find its way to those who are able to see it. I know that waiting in silence is the hardest thing. You want to see results, to see justice made visible, to see a clear reversal. But, my child, my justice is not slow, it is precise. And what is precise is never rushed. When you learn to trust this process, you will no longer tremble at every rumor, every whisper, every new development. You will understand that a movement is taking place not to conceal, but to reveal at the right time. My beloved child, be at peace in this. The truth I protect does not require you to carry it. It is creating its own witnesses. It is doing its own work. And when the moment comes, you will see people you never expected suddenly gaining clarity, not because you spoke more, but because the truth became bright enough that no one could ignore it. Stand firm. Keep your heart upright. The rest, I am doing in silence, but never in weakness. My beloved child, at this point, I want you to look closely at a very particular phenomenon, because it will help you recognize that the light has begun to work more deeply than you imagined. When truth is no longer fully concealed, manipulators do not collapse immediately. Instead, they often expose themselves through their own reactions. This is the stage many people misunderstand, because they expect exposure to arrive as a dramatic moment, a direct accusation, or a clear reversal. But in my order, exposure often comes first through the loss of control in those who were accustomed to controlling. You will begin to notice that they talk more than before. They explain more than necessary. They repeat the same story in different words, with a more hurried tone, as if afraid that if they pause even for a moment, something will be discovered. My child, remember this. Those who stand in truth do not need to speak much. Those who fear truth cannot remain silent. As the light draws near, manipulators lose their patience. They begin to reveal themselves through their own urgency to control the outcome. I want you to notice another sign. They begin to change tactics. Where once they may have used gentleness, concern, and reasonable arguments to guide others, now, sensing that light has reached hidden corners, they shift into defense. They become sensitive to questions. They grow irritated when asked to clarify. They interpret inquiry as offense. And if you look carefully, you will see this truth. It is not the question that unsettles them, but the threat of losing control that frightens them. Truth does not threaten the honest. It only threatens those who live by darkness. My beloved child, when manipulators begin to surface, you may feel tempted to respond. You may want to point out contradictions, expose falsehoods, or force them to admit the truth. But I tell you, do not rush. The deepest exposure does not come from you being right, but from their inability to maintain the role they are playing. When they must constantly adjust their words, add details to patch gaps, or shift blame to preserve their image, that is when the role becomes too heavy to sustain. And it is that exhaustion that causes the mask to fall on its own. I also want you to recognize something crucial. Manipulators often believe they know you very well. They think they understand how you will react, what you will fear, where you will give in. So when you do not respond as they expect, when you are calmer, slower, and explain lest they become unsettled, that confusion reveals what they tried to hide. They do not control you as much as they assumed. And when control begins to loosen, their true nature gradually comes into view. My beloved child, engrave this in your heart. Do not confuse noise with strength. When manipulators speak louder, act more urgently, and apply greater pressure, it is not a sign that they are growing stronger. It is a sign that they are losing ground. Those who are steady do not need to make noise. Those who are slipping must draw attention to keep their balance. So do not fear exaggerated reactions. See them as evidence that the light is working exactly where it should. You will also notice another phenomenon occurring at the same time those around them begin to sense the distortion. They may not yet be able to name it, but they feel less at ease than before. Words that once sounded reasonable now leave a bitter aftertaste. Decisions that were once accepted begin to be questioned, and while the manipulator struggles to maintain a facade of normalcy, the abnormal becomes even more visible. My child, truth does not need to be advertised. It reveals itself through contrast. I know this stage can make you tense. You sense the atmosphere shifting. You feel the instability. You may worry that everything is becoming chaotic. But I tell you, this is not chaos. This is movement. A distorted structure cannot fall unless it is shaken first. And shaking always unsettles those who have grown accustomed to false stability. Do not rush to conclusions when things no longer feel calm. It may well be a sign that true order is drawing near. My beloved child, the most important thing I want you to do in this season is to keep yourself from being pulled into their game. A manipulator will try to draw you into emotional reactions, into endless arguments, into the need to prove that you are right. But I do not need you to prove anything. I need you to stand firm. When you refuse to play by their rules lose their power. When you are not led by their rhythm, they will lose their rhythm on their own. I also want you to remember this: true exposure does not shame you. It shames deception. If at times you feel misunderstood in this process, do not lose heart. Light does not shine once and then stop. It shines gradually. And each time it shines, another layer is revealed. You do not need to reclaim your honor with words. Your true honor lies in the fact that you do not need to lie in order to exist. And it is this consistency that will rise up to protect you when every disguise falls away. My beloved child, let me close this with a deep reassurance. When a manipulator begins to expose themselves, it is a sign that their season of operating in the shadows has come to an end. No matter how much they try to cling, to control, or to blur the truth, the light has already reached where it needs to reach. Your part is not to hasten the collapse, but to not stand in the way of the light. Step aside. Keep your heart at peace. And you will see this unfold very clearly. They themselves will say what they should not say, do what they should not do, and reveal what they cannot hide. When the time comes, you will look back and realize that it was not you who fought to expose the truth, but the truth itself that stepped forward to defend you. And in that moment, you will understand why I have always told you exposure does not need noise. It only needs light, and light never fails. My child, when I lead you out of a season of sifting and set your feet in an open space, the first thing I teach you is not to run faster, but not to look back. Do not look back to mourn what has passed. Do not look back to seek permission from old voices. Do not look back to measure yourself by standards that once confined you. New space is not for those who carry old habits. It is for those who learn to live facing forward, with a straight back and a light heart. I do not widen your space so you can display yourself. I widen it so you can dwell in your identity, in peace, in my companionship. I know that even when a new door opens, old memories can still call your name. Moments that once felt familiar, relationships that once brought comfort, ways of living that once helped you survive, may whisper, "Come back, it was safer there." But, my child, true safety is not found in what is familiar. True safety is found in my presence. What is familiar may feel gentle for a moment, but it no longer nourishes you. I did not pull you out so you would wander. I led you in so you could remain with what is alive, growing, and calling you forward. In this open space, You will learn a new rhythm, the rhythm of enough. You no longer have to prove yourself in order to stay. No longer have to strive to be seen. No longer have to exhaust yourself to hold your place. You will discover that your value does not increase when you do more. Your value is revealed when you are faithful to what I entrust to you. Faithful in small things, in quiet choices, in days when no one applauds. This is where I train you to become a steward of time, energy, emotions, and gifts, so that expansion does not scatter you, but brings you into focus. My child, an open space is also where the light shines more clearly. The things that are still mixed within you will be easier to see. I do not do this to accuse you, I do it to refine you. Light does not shame, light heals. As you walk in the light, you will fear your unfinished places less, because you know that I am at work there. As it is written, if we walk in the light, as He Himself is in the light, we have fellowship with one another, and the blood of Jesus Christ, His Son, cleanses us from all sin. You do not need to hide in order to be loved. You are loved in order to be transformed. I also teach you something important in this space. Do not rush to fill it. Openness is not an invitation to accumulate. It is an invitation to discern. Some opportunities come simply because you have grown, but not every opportunity is yours. Some doors open to test you, but not every door leads where I want you to go. You will learn to ask me before saying yes, to listen to your own body before agreeing, to say no without long explanations. My peace will become your measure when peace leaves. You know to stop when peace remains. You know you can move forward. In this open space, I also place you among new relationships, not more, but truer. These people are not threatened by your light, nor do they need you to shrink to feel secure. They do not live by reading your emotions. They live by honesty and respect. You will find yourself heard without needing to defend yourself, loved without having to pay with your own self. And you will also learn to become such a friend, present, truthful, and not controlling. Your maturity will create an atmosphere where others are free to be who they truly are. I know that in the early days of this new space, you may feel unfamiliar. Stability can make you restless. Stillness can make you anxious. Sufficiency can stir the fear that you are missing something. But, my child, these are only the echoes of an old rhythm. Give your soul time to relearn how to rest. Rest is not stagnation. Rest is rooting. When the roots grow deep, the branches can rise high without breaking. I am setting your roots in unconditional love, in a presence that does not withdraw, in a promise that does not shift. And I remind you of a principle of open space. Do not turn back to compare. Comparison will cause you either to shrink or to inflate. Neither comes from me. You are not called to be fast like others, nor to slow yourself out of fear of being different. You are called to be in rhythm with me. When you keep the right rhythm, you will not burn out, lose your way, or forfeit your joy, as it is written. But one thing I do, forgetting what lies behind and reaching forward to what lies ahead. I press on toward the goal. You do not move forward by carrying the past. You move forward by releasing it into my hands. My child, in this open space I entrust you with a beautiful responsibility. Live as one who is free. The free do not need to prove themselves. They are present. The free do not retaliate. They choose. The free do not fear loss. They know that what belongs to me will arrive in its time. You will learn to walk lightly, yet firmly, gently, yet steadfastly. You will learn to delight in simple things, to be faithful in ordinary matters, and to be courageous in necessary decisions. Your freedom will not be loud, it will endure. Therefore, my child, step into this open space with eyes forward and a heart placed in my hands. Do not look back. Do not negotiate with old fears. Do not seek permission from voices that have lost their authority. I am here guiding you, holding you, and teaching you how to live without turning back. And as you continue to walk, you will realize this open space is not only a place you arrive at, it is a way you live, living in light, in peace, and in the freedom I prepared for you long ago. My beloved child, there is a very particular moment in every process of my justice, the moment when those who were once silent begin to speak. Not the loudest voices, not those who display the strongest opinions, but those who have observed long enough, seen clearly enough, and remained silent, not out of cowardice, but because they were waiting for the truth to complete itself. When these people speak, it is no longer a personal opinion, it is a confirmation, and that confirmation carries more weight than hundreds of defenses. I want you to understand this, so you will not grow impatient in the days before it happens. Their silence was not indifference, nor was it a betrayal of you. Many saw that something was not right, but they lacked enough clarity to speak without turning truth into controversy. They heard differing accounts, witnessed misaligned actions, sensed unnecessary urgency, yet they chose to wait. And when the light became strong enough, when the pieces could no longer be distorted, they knew that silence would then become complicity. That is the moment they speak. My child, hear this clearly: when those who were silent speak, what changes is not only the atmosphere, but the axis of power. Before that moment, manipulators rely on the hesitation of the many to maintain control. But the instant a person with credibility, understanding, and standing says, "I see that something is not right," the balance shifts. No accusation is needed. No judgment is required. One honest sentence is enough to shake an entire structure built upon prolonged silence. You will see this plainly. Manipulators begin to listen more than they speak. They test reactions. They weigh every word. They are no longer comfortable imposing as before. That very caution is proof that power no longer rests fully in their hands. In my order, true authority does not need pressure. Only false authority requires the silence of others to survive. When that silence is broken, false power loses its foundation. I know you have wondered, why didn't they speak sooner? But, my child, truth spoken too early can sometimes create more chaos. If light shines before eyes are ready to see, people will turn away. I do not work by human impatience, I work by timing. And the right time is not when pain feels sufficient, but when truth is clear enough that it cannot be bent. When those who were silent speak, it is the sign that the time has come. I also want you to recognize this: those who speak do not necessarily stand on your side as a faction. They do not need to defend you emotionally. What they do is restore order. They revisit process. They ask for transparency. They bring attention to what was overlooked. And in that process, truth stands on its own. You do not need to be defended to be validated. You need order to be restored. When order returns, authority naturally returns to its rightful place. My beloved child, there is something very important I want you to hold within your heart. Do not idolize the one who speaks up, and do not place misplaced expectations upon them. They are not your savior. I am the deliverer. They are only instruments, used at the right time. If you place your hope in people, you will easily be disappointed when they do not do as much as you expected. But if you place your hope in me, you will see that it is enough for them to do their rightful part, for the light to continue spreading. I also want you to understand that this moment may leave you feeling unsettled. When those who were once silent begin to speak, you may feel both relief and unease at the same time. Relief, because at last you are no longer alone in your awareness. Unease, because you sense that things are beginning to move. and movement always carries uncertainty. But, my child, uncertainty is not dangerous when I am the one leading the way. Uncertainty is only dangerous when you walk alone. And now, you are not walking alone. Let me say this as well: when those who were once silent choose to speak, they also pay a price. They face scrutinizing eyes, the risk of being misunderstood, and the possibility of being drawn into conflict. Therefore, do not treat their voices as something automatic or owed. See them as part of justice coming into motion, where each person is invited to stand in their proper place. And when they stand where they should, your place is also restored to you, my beloved child. Do not rush to place yourself at the center of events right now. This is not the time for you to prove that you are right. This is the time to remain calm, consistent, and truthful. Your composure in this moment will clarify the difference between you and those who have relied on pressure to control. When you do not need to speak much, do not need to react strongly, and do not need to use support as a weapon for retaliation, you reveal that your authority does not come from noise, but from the position in which I have placed you. I know you have waited a long time to witness this moment, and I tell you this: your waiting has not been in vain. When those who were once silent begin to speak, it is a sign that the truth has traveled far enough that it can no longer be pushed back. From here, there may still be steps ahead, but the axis has shifted. Authority has begun to return, and what begins in quietness will end in clarity. My beloved child, keep your heart at rest. Allow me to continue doing my work through the people I have prepared. You do not need to push. You do not need to control. You only need to stand firm where you are. For when authority is restored, it does not arrive as a loud gift. It comes as a deep realization that you never truly lost it. You are simply being returned what has always belonged to you. My beloved child, I want you to grasp a profound truth which, once you do, will cause many burdens to fall from your shoulders immediately. You do not need to defeat anyone in order to have your authority restored. You only need to stand in the right place. The victory people usually pursue is about winning and losing, about proving themselves right and others wrong. But in my order, authority is not given to the one who speaks better, nor does it belong to the one who dominates more skillfully. Authority belongs to the one who stands in the position I have assigned and does not abandon it, even under pressure, even amid misunderstanding, even when pushed from every side. I see that within your heart there sometimes rises a very natural desire, the wish for everything to be overturned quickly, for the truth to be publicly acknowledged, for those who have done wrong to be confronted. I do not condemn that feeling, but I want you to rise above it. For if you turn your goal into defeating them, you will unknowingly step onto their playing field, and that field operates by tension, by reaction, by constant comparison. I have not called you into that arena. I have called you to step out of it. My child, standing in the right place does not mean standing still in passivity. It means keeping your inner axis aligned with the truth, even while everything around you is still shifting. It means not retreating out of fear, but also not rushing forward out of impatience. It means not allowing the words of others to define you, yet not needing to use words to define yourself. When you stand in the right place, you no longer need to strain to protect an image. Image is no longer what matters. Position is what is essential. I want you to recognize something very subtle. Manipulators often win emotional confrontations, but they lose in spaces where order is restored. If you try to defeat them with words, they can pull you into argument. If you try to defeat them with speed, they will push the pace even faster. But when you stand in the right place, calm, clear, unhurried, they lose their advantage, for their advantage does not lie in truth. but in pulling others away from their rightful position. My beloved child, I am training you in a different kind of victory. Victory through presence. Presence is not loud or ostentatious, yet it carries weight. When you are present in the right place, questions arise naturally. Processes must adjust to make room for you. Decisions can no longer be made behind your back. You do not need to demand this in anger. Your presence itself calls order into being. And when order returns, authority returns as well, quietly, naturally. I know you may feel unsettled when you see those who once pressured you still speaking, still explaining, still trying to maintain control. But, my child, do not be deceived by the surface. When you stand in the right place, their noise no longer occupies the center of the room. The center has shifted from imposed voices to truth brought into the light. And that shift, even if unnamed, has already begun to reshape the outcome. I also want you to release another burden, the burden of being vindicated immediately. Vindication is a human demand for honor. Authority does not depend on how quickly others understand you. Authority depends on whether you can hold your place when others do not yet understand. There are seasons when you will see justice unfold before your eyes. There are seasons when you are protected from harm without any grand declaration. Both are gifts. Do not make public recognition the condition of your peace. My beloved child, standing in the right place also means refusing to retaliate in human ways. I know there are moments when you want to use the very tools they used: pressure, sharp words, strategy. But if you do, you will lose what I am restoring to you. Your authority is not built on silencing others, it is built on not needing to do so. When you refuse retaliation, you speak a clear language to the spiritual realm. You trust that true order does not need to be defended with darkness. I want you to look back on the journey you have just walked and recognize this. Some doors did not open because you pushed harder, but because you stood in the right place long enough. Some changes did not come because you persuaded, but because you remained steady. Some people began to listen not because you spoke better, but because you were no longer speaking to the old rhythm. This is how I teach you to enter authority, not by seizing it, but by holding your ground. My child, many have lost their authority at the very moment they thought they had to win to keep it. They fought, they argued, they proved themselves, and in the end, they grew weary, bitter, and stepped away from their inner place. I do not want you on that path. I want you to walk the narrow but firm road, the road of one who stands in the right place and lets truth do its own work. You do not need to pull truth toward yourself, you only need to remain with it. You may see others temporarily believing they are still in control. They may speak, arrange, and project confidence. But, my child, do not measure timing by feelings. True order always carries a delay, not because it is weak, but because it is precise. When every piece is settled into place, a single small movement is enough to change the entire picture. And you, by standing where you belong, are becoming the peace that cannot be ignored. I want you to engrave this as a word of release. You do not need to defeat them to have peace. You only need to remain in the truth. Remain when you want to leave. Remain when you want to react. Remain when you want to shrink back. This remaining is not endurance. It is the steadiness of one who knows where they belong. And as you remain, many things will slip from the hands of those who were never given the right to hold them. My beloved child, let me close with a reassurance that is gentle yet strong. Authority is not something you must fight for. It is something returned to you when you stop abandoning your place. You do not need to win over them. You do not need to make them lose. You only need to stand in the right place, and from that place, all that was misaligned will gradually return to proper order. Then you will understand that true victory is not loud or dramatic. But deep you remain yourself steady, at peace, no longer pushed aside. My beloved child, this truth may leave you silent with awe. I am not only preserving a place for you, I am preserving the very person I created you to be. You thought what was threatened was merely the house, the place where you rest, the space you call safe. But I say to you, if the house is kept while your identity is lost, that is not complete protection. I keep the house to keep you, and I keep you so that you no longer live as one pushed about by circumstances, but as one who stands firm within my order. Listen carefully, my child. There are moments in life when what seems to be property is, in fact, a mirror reflecting identity. When identity is shaken, possessions are touched. When identity is strengthened, possessions are set back in their proper place. I allowed this trial to come close, not to frighten you, but to strip away the misunderstandings you carried about yourself. You once thought all you needed was stability. I want you to know you are called to stand firm. Stability may come and go, standing firm remains. I know there were days when you asked yourself, if everything collapses, then who am I? And that very question reveals that, for a time, you had tied your identity to what was external. But, my beloved child, identity is not issued by an address, not validated by documents, and not revoked by another person's decision. Your identity comes from me, the one who called you by name before you had anything you could call your own. Therefore, when I keep your identity for you, I am placing you in a position that cannot be stripped away. No matter how much circumstances may shift, there are those who tried to make you believe that if you lost your dwelling, you would become weak. If you were pressured, you would fall silent. If you were shaken, you would be easier to control. But they do not know that in this very testing, I am doing the opposite. I am making your identity more concentrated, more solid. When you no longer rely on outward stability to feel that you have worth, you begin to discover value in a place no one can reach. And when that value is set in its rightful place, everything else will begin to reorder itself around it. My beloved child, I want you to look back at your own responses throughout this journey. You have learned not to panic when you are pressed. You have learned not to apologize simply because you need time. You have learned not to hand over authority just to keep the peace. These are not temporary skills. They are signs that your identity is being restored. A person who does not know who they are will rush to compromise. A person who knows who they are will choose calmly. And I have seen that calm beginning to take root within you. I also want you to understand this. The fact that I keep your identity does not mean you will no longer face trials. On the contrary, challenges will continue to come, but they will no longer define you. When you know where you stand within my order, external collisions become like knocks on a door, not earthquakes beneath your feet. You will hear them. You will discern. You will respond, but you will not be swept away. That is the difference between someone who merely survives and someone who has been firmly established. My beloved child, let me place within your heart an anchor, so you do not lose direction as you look back on what has passed and ahead to what is coming. God is our refuge and strength, a very present help in trouble. Psalm 4:6-1. I do not only help you when everything is about to fall apart, I am very near when you need to be reminded of who you are. Refuge is not merely a physical space. Refuge is an identity anchored firmly in me. You may have thought that if I kept the house for you, everything would return to the way it was. But I am not bringing you back to the old place. I am leading you forward to the right place. The right place is where you no longer fear loss, because you know what cannot be lost. The right place is where you no longer have to prove your worth by clinging tightly, because you know that your worth does not depend on what you hold. The right place is where you are no longer shaken by whispers, because the strongest voice within you has been reconnected to its true source. My beloved child, I am not only keeping a house for you, I am keeping your identity so that you may stand in that house with a new posture. Not the posture of someone afraid of having things taken away, but the posture of someone who knows they have been entrusted. When identity is secure, you will manage differently, decide differently, and walk differently. You will no longer live in the house as an anxious temporary occupant, but as a steward at peace. And that peace does not come from the absence of risk. It comes from knowing that I am holding you, even when the wind blows. I want you to engrave this deeply as a promise for the road ahead. What you almost lost was only the shadow of what I am preserving. And what I am preserving, your identity, is the foundation on which every other blessing stands firm. When you understand this, you will no longer be afraid of future trials, for you will know that even if circumstances change, I am still holding you in a place that cannot be shaken. My beloved child, there is something very few people recognize when they stand before the threat of loss. The first thing I protect is not what you are holding in your hands, but what is sustaining you from within. You looked at the recent situation and thought I was intervening to preserve a place to live, a physical space, a visible stability. But I say to you, I am doing a far deeper work. I am restoring your inner foundation, because without that foundation being healed, no matter how much you manage to keep on the outside, you would still live in trembling and unease. Listen carefully, for this truth reaches down to your very roots. There are seasons in life when you think you are losing what matters most. But in reality, you are being invited to face a greater question. What foundation are you standing on? You had grown accustomed to leaning on things that seemed solid: familiarity, long-standing relationships, structures built by human hands, and you did not realize that over time, your life's foundation had slowly shifted away from me. Not because you deliberately walked away, but because you were too busy keeping everything running smoothly. And it was in that very smoothness that you unknowingly built your life upon supports that could be altered by human hands. My beloved child, when the foundation within you is no longer firmly anchored in me, even a small tremor can make you feel as though everything is about to collapse. That is why the recent situation exhausted you so deeply. Not because you are weak, but because your foundation has been carrying too much weight that was never meant to rest upon it. I do not blame you for this, but I love you enough not to allow you to continue living this way. And so, I allowed the trial to touch the surface, so that you might recognize what has been unfolding at a deeper level. I want you to look back at how you responded during those tense days. You began to ask yourself, if I lose this, what do I have left? And that very question told me that I needed to do something more important than simply preserving the circumstances. I needed to restore in you a firm awareness that who you are is not defined by what you possess, where you are, or what you are able to control. You are one whom I have set upon the rock, not upon the sand of convenience or familiarity. And when that foundation is set back in its rightful place, the fear within you begins to dissolve, layer by layer. My beloved child, an inner foundation is not restored by temporary encouragement. It is restored when you learn again how to trust, not trust in people, not trust in systems, but trust in my leading even when you do not yet see the outcome. You learned this in silence, in moments when you could no longer control the pace of events. And it was precisely in that loss of control that you began to release the burden of having to keep everything together. When you let go, I began to reset what had shifted. I want you to understand something very important. The foundation I am restoring within you is not only meant to carry you through the present situation, but to prepare you for greater things ahead. If you step into a new season with an old foundation, you will continue to tremble at every change. But if you enter a new season with a foundation re-anchored in me, you will face change with clarity rather than panic. That is why I did not rush to end the trial the moment you asked. I patiently continued the deeper work, even when you could not always feel it. My beloved child, let me place within your heart an anchor of remembrance, so you may know what you are standing upon, for no one can lay any foundation other than the one already laid, which is Jesus Christ. 1 Corinthians 3:1-1. This foundation does not shift when people change their minds, does not crack when circumstances turn, and is not eroded by time. When you stand upon it, you do not need to cling to everything around you to feel secure. Your security comes from a deeper place, a place no one can touch. I know you once believed that if I preserved the circumstances, all your anxiety would disappear. But, my child, if anxiety only fades when circumstances are stable, it will return each time circumstances change. I do not want you living in that cycle. I want you to live with a steadiness that does not depend on external conditions. That is why I work from the inside out. When the inner foundation is strengthened, the outer circumstances no longer hold the same power over you. My beloved child, this renewed foundation will also change how you see others. You will no longer seek reassurance from them, no longer fear losing them to the point of sacrificing yourself. You will love without dependency, collaborate without handing over misplaced authority, and this will protect you more effectively than any agreement or promise others could offer. When the foundation is right, boundaries become natural without strain, without long explanations. I want you to know that restoring your inner foundation is not something that happens in a single moment and then ends. It is a process you will continue to walk through with me. There will be times when you notice yourself leaning again on old supports, and I will gently draw you back, not through punishment, but through reminder. A reminder that you do not need to strain to survive. A reminder that you have been placed upon a foundation that cannot be torn down. My beloved child, when you look back on this journey one day, you will realize that the most precious thing was not what you almost lost, but what you were given back. You were given back trust. You were given back stability. You were given back the ability to stand still without fear. And from that foundation, I will continue to build greater things, not for you to boast in, but for you to live fully in the position I appointed for you from the very beginning. Now, pray, loving Father God, my eternal refuge. Today I come before you not with noise or demands, but with a heart that has passed through fear, weariness, and awakening. I confess that there were times I did not understand what was happening around me. Times when I felt my place being shaken, not because I was wrong, but because I had remained silent for too long in order to keep everything peaceful. Please see the years I endured in silence, the moments I chose avoidance over confrontation, the times I made myself smaller out of fear of making others uncomfortable. I lay all of this before you not to condemn myself, but to be healed and set free. Father, if there has been any authority operating behind my back, if any decisions have been made without my presence, if any words have been spoken in the name of what is good for me, while in reality stripping away the authority you entrusted to me, I ask that you bring all of it into the light. I do not ask for retaliation. I do not ask for shame to fall on anyone. I ask for your order to be restored. Restore boundaries where they have been blurred. Return the voice to its rightful place. Restore the power of choice to the hands of the one to whom you have entrusted it. O God, guard me from the fear of having to prove myself right. Keep me from the temptation to win over people through emotion, words, or pressure. I choose to stand in the right place rather than to defeat anyone. I choose to remain in truth rather than follow the rhythm of manipulation. When the truth has not yet been fully spoken, grant me the patience not to disrupt the process through haste. When the light is quietly at work, grant me the peace not to interfere through anxiety. Father, I thank you that what you are preserving for me is not merely a circumstance, but my very identity. I thank you that in the moment I thought I was about to lose something, you were instead resetting my inner foundation, pulling me away from unstable supports, and placing me back upon the rock that cannot be shaken. Teach me to live from an identity anchored in you, so that I no longer fear when circumstances change, and no longer tremble when people change their minds. Help me know who I am before you, so that I no longer need to seek assurance from anyone else. O God of perfect timing, help me recognize that true exposure does not need noise. True justice does not need haste, and true authority does not need to be seized. Grant me the humility to walk with you, the alertness not to return to old paths, and the steadiness to step into a new season with the posture of one entrusted, not one afraid of losing what has been given. I place my entire future into your hands, trusting that what you preserve for me is always greater than what I nearly lost, and that what you are building will stand firm to the very end. I offer this prayer in the holy name of Jesus Christ. Amen. And do not forget to subscribe and turn on notifications so that together we may build a strong and growing community of faith